In this video, we're going to be taking a look at making a woodworking plan for our little wagon wheel bench here. Now, this image was posted to a woodworking group that I belong to, and they wanted to know how to acquire a set of plans for this, or how you might go about figuring it out, um, if you just saw a picture and wanted to build this. And of course, depending on your level of woodworking experience, um, figuring out on your own uh, may be a fairly easy thing to do, or maybe a more complicated thing to do, just depending on your experience. Now, I've been doing woodworking full time for a lot of years, so I've built a lot of benches. I've not built this particular style bench, mainly because I don't really love the design, but at any rate, I'll show you how you can go about generating a set of plans for this pretty easily. So with that said, we'll go ahead and get started. Now, it is important to know some of the key dimensions when you're building benches. For example, the seat of our bench from the floor is typically 18 inches. So that's the dimension we're going to be using for this. The other key dimension is the depth of our seat. Probably should not exceed 18 inches unless you plan to use cushions on the back of your bench, and in which case you would want that uh, to be deeper to accommodate a cushion. So maybe I have a double collider that I make a lot of, and that seat is 22 inches deep, which allows for a 4-inch cushion, which gives us an 18-inch seat. So just some things to think about. In this case, I don't think we're going to plan on using this bench with cushions, so we're going to make our seat 18 inches. And you can see here in the picture, it appears that our back is essentially the same as our seat, so our back will be 18 inches also. The other consideration is what angle is this back at? I like to use 10 degrees. Some people like to use 15 degrees. It does look like this is probably greater than 10, so it probably is 15, but that is really a personal choice, I think. I'm going to make it at 10 because that's what I would typically use. But you may want to experiment and maybe make a 15-inch or 15 degree and determine, how much you like to lay back in on the bench. Okay. The other consideration for me is from the bench seat to the top of our wagon wheel. I'd like to use the top of our wagon wheel as an armrest. And so I would like that to be right in the neighborhood of 9.5 inches. Could be slightly less, could be slightly more, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 9.5 at all possible. Okay. Um, there's some other considerations that we're going to talk about as we go through, but for us, the main thing that we need to know is what is the deal with this wheel, this wagon wheel. What are all the dimensions associated with it? So we're going to get it all laid out and explain how we're going to do that. The only other thing in this particular design, I'm not in love with these supports. Okay, I don't think they're necessary. I think this bench will have plenty of stability without that, but I won't really know until the bench is actually built. I believe this bottom board will be plenty of stability without the supports, but you could see that this support board goes straight across here. Okay, so in the event that we needed to add that support board, we always could. So in other words, if you look closely, it's actually a complete wheel and then the support board added to the bottom of the wheel. There's actually two thicknesses of boards here. Okay, so if we need this support, we can always go back and add it in the end. And maybe that's what happened here. Maybe they made this and then they decided they wanted a little bit more stability, and so they added that support board as kind of an afterthought. That's certainly possible. But at any rate, those are the considerations. So we'll go ahead and get to laying this out and show you how it works. So the first thing I'm going to be using here is CorelDRAW for my 2D layout. And I usually use a combination of CorelDRAW and SketchUp. Of course, SketchUp is free online. And CorelDRAW I've been using for tens of years. So that's what I'm most familiar with, but certainly any application like Adobe Illustrator or Inkscape, which is totally free vector graphics application, and there's dozens of others, you could do the same process with any of those programs. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull down a guideline to represent my ground, and then I'm going to offset that guideline 18 inches, which is going to be my seat height. So there's my seat height. I am going to create a rectangle and make it 1.5 inches tall by 7¼ inches wide. And then I'm going to copy that over and then make another copy and make it 3½ inches. So what we're going to do for our bench seat, for this example anyhow, we are going to do a 2x8, a 2x4, and then another 2x8. And what that gives us is exactly 18 inches. Okay. So then we'll make this 3½ inches tall. This is going to be a 2x4 for the frame of our bench. Okay, like so. And then our back is going to be the same as our bench. So there's our back, and we want it to be at a 10-degree angle. So that's what 10 degrees looks like. Okay. So now we need to go ahead and create our wagon wheel. Now we're going to move our bench up to that 18-inch line. So there's our seat height. So now we're going to make our wagon wheel. So I'm going to just draw out a line, and I'm going to make that line 16 inches. Okay. Now there's nothing magical about that dimension. That's just where I want to start at and see how the wheel works out. Okay. So we're going to make a copy of that line, and then we're going to rotate it -30 degrees. -60 degrees, rather. There we go. And then we'll bring this in, and then we will flip it over, and it's going to go over here. And then we're going to flip this down, and there is our wagon wheel. Okay, so it's a 6-sided wheel here. So we're going to put that on the ground like so. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to, I'm trying to think here, let's take this and let's combine it, and then let's do a contour to the inside. So how are we going to do that? Let's see. Yes, we want. Let's back that up here. So we're going to do 1.5. Okay. And then we are going to break this apart. So this outside one we don't need. Let's break that apart. So we just need this inside one, and this is 1.5 inches. Okay, so that is what we want. Okay. Now, let's see here. What do I want to do? Let's go ahead and so we're going to do this here. So let's go ahead and use our paint bucket tool and fill that in like so. And then let's just get rid of this, the rest of this. So this is the board that we need to cut. So it's going to be 16 inches long. It's going to have a 30-degree miter on the ends here, and it's 1.5 inches thick. So that was one question that we had, was what size board do we need? So we need 16-inch boards. So we're going to do that. And we're going to mirror that over here. And then we're going to mirror that. And then we're going to put this right on the ground. Okay, so now we know that according to the picture that we had, we have one vertical piece that is 1.5 inches. So it's going to go right dead center of that. And then we had this piece that what we're going to do here, let's see, what do I want to do here? Let's go ahead and we'll fill that and that. Then we can get rid of, let's rotate this like so, and I'm just going to push this up like so for a moment. So these here, we are going to have no fill, go like that. All right, so this right here, we're going to do something a little bit different. So this point right here, we want to move down. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So let's take this. We're going to add a node so I can then pick that up and move it right there. Okay. And so then we're going to take our fill bucket. Okay. And then we're going to move this down. And take that node and put it right there in our fill bucket like that. Okay. So then these two, we are going to have no fill, right click, and that's our wagon wheel. Okay, now let's compare this to the original drawing. And you can see here we have that one vertical member going through. Now this horizontal member here, you can see it's going straight through. So straight through to the other side, where here it's not. See where it's offset and offset? Okay, and the reason that they're doing that is so that this board doesn't need a double angle. Now, I'm not sure I'm in love with that look, but that is how it was made. Okay, so that's what we're going to run with because that's what was requested. So now we have our wagon wheel here, and I'm going to just slide it over, and that's basically what we've got going on. Okay, so one of the things that we want to look at here in the original was this horizontal board here. You can see we can't see it, much beyond that. So we have to think about, so our seat support can go here, 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 here. So as far as the connections go, this board can be mounted here, mounted to this one. There's plenty of screw locations there and here. So I think this is pretty good as far as being able to have something to screw and support everything the way we need it to. Now, we don't know what the height is here, but look at there, 9 3/4. So that actually worked out really well. Remember I said we wanted 9.5 to use that as an armrest. So that's okay. So the only really thing that we got to do is fine tune the position of this. So if we just did it right there, that looks pretty good. So I think what I'm going to do is, what do I want to do? I think let's do this. Let's move it. I'm going to move our back a 1/2 inch back and a full inch up. Maybe I want a 1/2 and a 1/2. So we have this gap right here. No, I think we can go a full inch. So I think that works good. The only other thing that I'm going to do for our back here is we're going to extend this. So let's do that real quick. Let's extend that. But then we're going to cut it back so that this is in line like that. Okay, so we're going to screw there, screw there, screw there, and that will support our back really nice. Okay, and I'm thinking here on the front, on this other piece here, I don't know. No, I think we're good there. The only thing I might do differently here is let's see here. I'm trying to think. I'm going to cut this off. I'm just trying to figure out exactly how to do that. So this seat board here, bring that back to here. So we're going to just chop that off just like that. Okay, so this is our seat board. And this is our back. And I think that looks pretty good. I think that'll work out. So that is essentially how we would go about figuring out how to make our back. Now, I think what I would do, let's see here, just to polish this up a little bit. Let's go ahead and make that back to 90. So I think to polish this up a little bit, I would go, yes, a 1/2 inch. So instead of having this go all the way up, I think I would stop it there. Okay. So we'll move that back down like so. And just delete that one. There we go. So that looks good. So we'll do that. And then for the front here, we'll do a similar thing where we'll just push that back like so. And I think that looks pretty good. And if you look at the original, you can see how it was kind of pushed back too, but this was kind of chipped off here at the front. So in this case, I don't think it's really necessary. So as far as screwing in our sideboard, we'll have this piece we could screw it into, this piece we could screw into, this piece. So we can have 2 screws here. So I think it'll be plenty strong support-wise. You know, really, we just probably have to build one and see if, you know, that configuration works. Okay, so now what we have to do is kind of pick apart all of the different dimensions here and angles and things of that nature to make sure we've got it all. So what I would typically do is we'll take this lower seat assembly, we will take this upper seat assembly, put it like that, and then I will take our wheel here. Looks like I got most of it. We'll make a copy of that so we have some dimensions to work off of. So the so right here we need a dimension there. Okay, so that's 21 3/8, and then we need a dimension here. So we'll go with a horizontal dimension. So you see that's 17 and a half. Okay. And then we are gonna, I'll tell you what, let's undo that because we need this dimension, but we also need this dimension, and then we also need that dimension. So then we're gonna break that dimension apart and slide it. We'll do that like that. Okay, that works. And this is how I like to do it when I'm dimensioning things. We can also put what that angle is, and that's fine too. So let's do that. Let's figure out what that angle is. So if I were to rotate that, it's 60 degrees. Okay, so we can do that too. So we can, the problem is we cannot, most of your miter saws can't actually cut a 60-degree miter. So that's why I just use the 2 dimensions, and then I probably won't even put 60 degrees because of that. Now this dimension here, or this angle here, if we make this, let's see, let's rotate that 10 degrees. So if we do this, right, and then we rotate this, so now you can see that's a 40-degree miter there. So we could just type in, okay, so that's 40 degrees. And so we make a board that's 21 3/8 long, but then we cut it right there at the tip, and we cut it 40-degree angle. Okay. So there you go. So, and then we can go back to and we might label that bottom seat assembly, back assembly, something to that effect. Okay. So then next up is the wheel. Now the wheel is pretty straightforward because we know that each one of these pieces have to be the same, so that's 16 inches. Okay. And then we know that each one of those corners need to be 30 degrees. So there you go. There's 30 and 30 and 30. Okay. So then we need our vertical dimension here. I guess we could do it this way. It can get kind of messy, so, and these, these really, we're gonna, because of the precision involved, we're just going to make these fit in the field. But we can use these a couple of dimensions here. So this dimension here, this 11 and a half would be the same as this, and then that 11 and 7/8 would be the same as this. So we don't need to replicate all of those angles so much. And then as far as, let's see here. Let's rotate that -30. This angle here, of course, would be 30. So I just want to illustrate that point, though. So let's make a line here. So all of those would be 30. So put that. So if we were to rotate that, you see there 30 degrees, yes. Okay, so what we can do then is just kind of copy this down here and say, hey, all of this 30, 30, 30, 30, 30. So all of those cuts are 30. So if we make a piece that's 11.5 inches and then cut 30-degree miter there. Now, when you go to build this, 16, 30, 30, those are all great. But see this 24 3/4? Obviously, I would physically measure this, and it may be slightly more or slightly less than this. So I would not actually use these actual dimensions. And then when I go to put this piece in here, we may want to find out, when I go to put this piece in here, we want this to be centered here. So it's centered along this, so we'll find the midpoint there and place that board accordingly. So my point is that board may be 12 inches, maybe 12 1/4, who knows? So whatever the field dimension is, then that's the dimension to use. It won't be necessarily exact, but it'll get us pretty close. Okay, so that will take care of all of those pertinent dimensions. So I think we're gaining on it here. The one thing that I do want to talk about a little bit is about the various framing options here. So in the original, it's tough to tell, but it looks to me like you have this piece, but there's nothing, there's no middle piece here. So these are just straight span boards, and it looks to be the same down here. Straight span boards. Okay, so when we're building, especially when we're building for profit, we're always thinking about cost. 2x material, 2x8s are, definitely more expensive than fence pickets, right? So that's just something to consider. What we're going to use for the actual frame of our bench. So in this case, maybe to cut costs, it doesn't look like they have any type of framing underneath our bench boards. It's just this board on the side, and then this is a flat span, which I'm not terribly big fan of. Even if the span is only 4 foot, like this bench appears to be, I'm not a fan of not actually having a frame underneath. So I will talk to you a little bit about that. So you can see here we have 17.5 inches. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and draw me out a 1.5 and 17.5. Okay, so there's that. So that is, and I'm going to line that up just like so. And then from here, let's just say we're going to build a 4-foot bench. We'll go with that for this example. So what I would do is right here, probably, so right in line, so this distance here is what? That distance there is 1.25 inches. So probably what I would do then is right here, come in 1.25. And so this would be, obviously with a 2x4. And then I would move this forward And yeah, just do it just like that. And then I would have one in the middle. Now, the advantage of doing this is we can now have our seat boards be fence pickets if we wanted to. And that would be cheaper than doing all 2-bys and still give you the same amount of support. So no issues there. So then I would go ahead and dimension this out. So we would say that this is 17.5. We would say that this is 48 inches. We would say that this is 45 inches, 13.25 to the midpoint, 22.5, and I guess we could put this in here. So that was 1.25 inches. Okay. That takes care of our seat framing. So the next step then would be our back framing, which would be quite similar, except so our back framing would be quite similar, except this piece would be 21 3/8. So that'd be 21.375. Okay, so that's step one. And this one is 21.375. And then the one thing that would differ here, let's go ahead and set that at 10, would be, so we'll put that there. Would be where this is. So then this is 3 inches. Okay, so we will get rid of that. And so that gap right here, let's go ahead and get rid of this dimension. So this would be 3 inches. Which would in turn make that bigger. 21 3/8, everything else stays the same. Okay. So there you go. That is what we would have total. So let's hit File, Save As, Wagon Wheel Bench. Okay. And that's what we'd be looking at. So now we have all of our necessary dimensions. And now that we are good to go. Okay. So now what we can do, if we want to take it one step further, what I like to do is I'd like to figure out exactly how many boards it's going to take to make this. Okay. So we need a total of, for example, I can just delete that. So those are 16 inches. 16. So we need a total of 12 of these. So there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So let's see how big 12 is altogether. 192. Don't know if this would actually work out this way, but 6 of them are exactly 96. So I don't think we could actually get 6 out of a 1 8-foot board. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to boop, move those up a little bit. Those are a question mark for me. So we need 2 of these. So we'll make this 3.5. And that we can get out of an 8-foot board because they're only 45 inches. We need 2 more of them that would take care of those for our back. So we will go ahead and make 2 more of those. Okay, so then we need 2 of these that are 17 and a half. So make that 3.5. And then we're going to need 21 and 3/8. We're going to need 2 of those. Okay. And what I like to do when I'm doing this, I like to copy, make it, so this is what I like to do. I like to make a copy. And then as I use up and define the boards, so we know we have all the boards we need for our wagon wheel. We know that we have all of our boards for these 4 45s, right? We know that we have our 17 and a halves, and now we have those. I just delete them as I fill them out over here. So in this case, we have 13 and a quarter. So we only need 1 of those. So now I can move that right there. And that was taken care of. And then we need the 15 and 3/8. 15.375. So now we have that one taken care of. We need a piece that's 24 and 3/4. And we need 2 of those. 1 for each wheel. So now we know that's taken care of. And then we need 11 and 7/8. And I'm just going to say 11 and 7/8 times 4, even though that's really only 11 and a half. That's okay. 11.875. Or you know what, really, let's just make it 12. And then we'll fit those by hand. So we need 4, so we need 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now we have all of our pieces, but again, I don't think we can get 12 pieces out of 1 stick for real. So no worries. Are these too long? No, those are 91s. Okay. So then we'll move that into place. We will move this into place. Move that into place. Then we still have these two dangling out here. So I think what I'll do is, I think I will go ahead and leave those over here and just say this. For simplicity's sake, let's do this. Boom, 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 boom. So these, we need two that are 10 footers. Because I really don't think we'll get those out of an 8-foot piece. And then we need two, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 8-footers. And that will give us all of our framing for our frames for our seats and our back, our wheels. And then the only other thing to consider is the seat boards. So we will do those at 48 inches. And we'll do 7 1/4. Those we will get out of an 8-footer because it's just one cut. So one for the seat, one for the back, and then we'll make those 3 1/2. There you go. So that is what we need. So we need 2 2x8 by 8. Go ahead and make this a little bit bigger here so we can see it. Then we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2x4 by 8. And then we need 2 2x4 by 10. There you go. So then we'll go ahead and populate this. I have a special macro that I developed that will add in all the dimensions of our boards. Fancy, huh? So now we can go ahead and make our plans. So I have this, which I will resize to fit. Boom. So scale this down a bit. That just gives us an overall side view of our project. I maybe flip it. I like to have my title block up here in the upper right hand corner. And then we will have a page for our seat framing details. Okay. And then we will have a page for our back framing details. And then we will have a page for our material cut list. So there we go. We now have plans for our wagon wheel bench. So let's go ahead and we'll just save this, file and save. And now we can go, if we want to make a 3D model, we can go into SketchUp and knock out a 3D model. Or if we just want to go straight to the miter saw, we can start cutting up some boards and building our wagon wheel bench. So that's how I go about doing it. I hope you enjoyed this one. Learn a little of the what's all involved behind the scenes in making a woodworking plan. Thanks for watching.